And D. Snyder
Man.
was really kind of the a little bit of the odd man out in that group because I think Denver and Zappa was obviously very undergroundish
Hmm.
in his fan. Denver was very popular at that during just ahead of that time in the
Yeah.
late 70s. And D. Snyder was popular with I think heavy metal and so forth, but I don't think he quite had the uh, notoriety or cachet of the other two as far
Mhm.
as people knowing who they were on site because he wore all the makeup and was part of the group. So
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very privileged to have Mr. Bob LeMent here with me. Now, if you're wondering, he is a cartoon character today. And
maybe every day, maybe every day.
well, you host your own show called Static Radio.
That is correct. Yeah.
All right. And you're kind of like me. I don't get too prepared when I do my shows. I mean, I'm prepared, but I'm writing down questions. Just it's boring. I think it takes away from the conversation when you write down questions, and then half the time you're sitting there waiting for that pause to ask the next question, and then the person's probably already answered before you even ask. So
Yeah, no, I like free flowing, no rehearsals. I mean, minimum prep and just kind of, let her rip.
so tell us a little bit about the show.
So, Static Radio is a show that I do with my co-host Miles Tidal. We've been doing it since January 1999. So we started doing the show after college. We got out of college, and I had an interest in. We had been on college radio, and
Mm.
but basically our career paths were not going to be in radio, and so we this I said, well, hey, I got this idea. Why don't we do this thing on the internet? Because it was fairly young at that point compared to now, and he's not quite as technologically savvy, and so I kind of set things up, and then every week we talk and tell stories, and we've been doing that every week since then. So it's been quite a lot longer than I figured. I figured we'd kind of get tired of it pretty quickly, but it we were doing it, basically for I guess like 5 years, and then Adam Curry decided to do some. Him and Dave Weiner decided to make podcasting the thing, and so then that kind of reinvigorated it at that point in about 2004, and we've been kind of carrying on since then.
1999. When I was a kid, I thought the year 2000 was so far away. And, 2000, I was going to turn 30. So, I mean, that's just
Mhm.
way off. And now I'm 52. And look, we're 2023. That's
Yeah, I know.
ridiculous.
But the funny thing is, you thought like that, and then you thought there'd be all, it's cool. I mean, everything is really nice in 2023. Don't get me wrong, but I always thought there'd be more futuristic things. Although, I mean, you can't be talking cartoon cat. That's pretty good.
Where'd you come up with that idea?
So over the years, we've done various things with the show just for fun, and a few years ago, I said I would. Well, actually, it's always been a thing to I wanted to animate some of it, and so a few years ago, I started doing the show. We'd record, and then I animated the two of us with these two little characters. He was a snowman, and I was a talking blue cat. And I did that for a while, but it was really hard. Even though there's a lot more tools and everything to do it, it's really hard to keep that up. It's a little easier just to do the talking than to do all the back end work for stuff like this. But so that's where this character came from because that was going to be my avatar, if you will. And we have several on YouTube, quite a few shows that are animated shows that have us talking as these characters. And so as time went on, and I've kind of been talking to other people a little more now, I thought, well, I'll just break this out, because there is obviously there's a way for it to do it in real time, and that's what I'm doing here for today. So it basically is looking at my face and listening to my voice and making the lips move and the eyes move for the character.
Well, I went through your social media kind of briefly, and then the pictures that I pulled up, you had your face covered. Is
Yeah,
that with everything?
yeah. I've never been publicly identified in social media or anything. So that came about. What you mentioned as we were getting started here, that you have children and grandchildren and so forth, and I have children as well. And so when we started this, basically we didn't have any kids, but that was on the horizon, as it were. And you get going and you say outrageous things from time to time, and so I'm like, well, maybe we better kind of curtail some of it, just because I don't want to have people coming up to me with my kids and everything and saying, why would you, this or that. So yeah, we've been I'd say obfuscated ever since. So we have the logo, which is a static radio dot, is what I call it, and then if we have pictures or whatever, we dot them, and so then that way we're kind of more behind the scenes, as it were. And then now with this, to be in front of the scenes, then I become a blue cat. So
When I first got the idea of doing this kind of show, I thought about putting a mask on just so nobody would ever know who I was. But
it's hard. It's hard. It's not been easy over the years to do that, but been pretty, fairly successful. There may be a glimpse or two here or there, but it's very rare.
do you have guests on your show?
From time to time, we've had guests. Most of the time, though, it's kind of more about the stories and the things that we encounter through life. So, but every once in a while, we'll have a guest on, and it usually it's a little bit different whenever that happens, because usually either one of us only knows the guest or is familiar with the guest, and then the other one kind of struggles through it a little bit. So it really has been basically a 23-year conversation about what's happening or weird things that come up in our lives or encounters or so forth. It seems that always, and I'm sure a lot of people have these. It's not anything that's kind of just for myself or for Miles, but you go out in the public and weird things happen, and we just document them basically. This week, the show, I haven't put it out yet. We recorded it last night, but the show is going to have a story about me doing a software demo for my work, and something goes completely wrong for the person doing the demo, and I just happen to be the person on the other end, and it's very humorous. I hope it's humorous. We'll put it that way.
Well, there's a lot of folks out there, they think, oh, my life is boring, I have nothing to talk about, and you'd be surprised some of the stories that I hear.
Yeah.
And some people just want to get on and be heard. Can you blame them?
No, so, just to document these things. So yeah, it's interesting. So my kids are growing up now, because they came along shortly after all this transpired, and now they listen, and they laugh, because there's lots of stories from their childhood, and like one that stands out just in my mind here as we're talking is my son. When he was little, he I joked that he talked like Mario or a little Italian man. He'd be like, "Daddy, what are we doing?" And he'd always be inflecting like that. And so there's a whole story one week where I'm talking about how I'm communicating with this toddler who sounds like Mario, and stuff like that happens, and you remember it for a little while, but then this kind of solidifies the memory into your old age. And then they're so little, they don't even have a clue. They don't remember any of it. And so it gives them another reference point for when they were small. So a lot of stuff like that happened over the show, just little weird, things with the kids.
Yeah, I'll watch when my kids were little, I'd watch them and notice them doing a lot of the same things that I did when I was a kid. And they think they're being sneaky. And it's like, dude, I tried to pull the same thing on my parents. And now our youngest grandson is living here with us. And the things he does to try to keep from going to bed, I think is so hilarious. He got, this has happened several times, but he'll get mad. And, most of the time he goes around and gives everybody a hug and a kiss and goes to bed.
Mm.
So last night he was so mad he wasn't going to give his grandma and grandpa a hug and kiss. He was just going to go to bed. So he gets in there and, he's this little almost 3-year-old brain is turning and he's like, oh, well, I can delay this a little longer. Grandma and grandpa need a hug and a kiss.
Now I changed my mind.
Right. And his mama's been going to school in the evening. So my wife and I take turns putting him to bed. Last night he said he wanted Pawpaw to put him to bed. So I'm in there and I'm sitting at the end of the bed waiting for him to go to sleep. Well, he had to have his little monster truck to sleep with. And of course he couldn't find it conveniently. And he just wouldn't stop about it. So ended up going to try to find this thing. Couldn't find it. I think he hid it just so we wouldn't find it. Because magically this morning he found it, but I ended up giving him a different truck. And why does he want to sleep with that truck?
Hey, sometimes you just got to have something there that's substantial. So
his newest thing is he stops and he goes, idea, Pawpaw.
See, those are the kind of moments that you capture that at the time, obviously you talk about it and so forth, but you may lose that, in 5 years or later, but that's funny idea, like Eureka idea. I mean, that's something to hold on to.
Right. Where in the world did he come up with that? I don't know. But, these things, if we don't document them, sometimes we forget about it. I forget a lot of the things my kids did,
Exactly. There was, if you remember a long time ago, there was a song, I'm trying to remember the year now, but it was by Andre 3000 and it was Hey Ya, right? Hey,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a huge thing, and my daughter was little, and they go, they're saying shake it, shake it, shake and shake it like a Polaroid picture, right? So she'd be singing along, but she would say shake it like a bulldozer. I don't know why, but no irony whatsoever. She's singing shake it, shake it like a bulldozer. She heard bulldozer and Polaroid picture and forever, now it's bulldozer for me, which it makes no sense. I don't know how you shake a bulldozer, but whatever. But that's the mind of a child at work, and you get those, like that idea thing you just mentioned. It's like they just come out of something, and you don't know what, and you don't know why, but they're hilarious, and you capture that, and as you go into the future, you'll have it to remember because of it, because you basically took a little bit more time to put it into a format that wasn't that instance, and then it kind of sticks with you a little bit better, I think.
A lot of the things that they say, or even the little shows they watch on TV, I notice my kids they'll get annoyed with it, and I'm like, but you know what? One day you're gonna miss that.
Yeah, really.
I mean, I can't tell you how much Barney annoyed me, but that was something my kids watched, especially my daughter, and, I don't know what shows I know one of them is Puppy Dog Pals that my grandson watches, and something else. And my daughter's like, "Oh my God, I can't stand that." Yeah, I get that, but remember, number one, it's not meant for you. It's
Right.
meant for the kids, and number two, you're gonna see everything change, and they get into something else, and you're gonna miss those days.
Right. Yeah, the kind of the carefreeness of it all. And
Mm-hmm.
I've got a little this is almost like this is a little aside, but it's also a story that I've never told. I don't even think my son even knows this, but growing up, there was a show called Gumball that was on, I think, Nickelodeon. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was a weird show where this, oddly enough, had a cat in it, and a talking cat, as well as some other people in a rainbow and that talked and all kinds of weird stuff. It was kind of more like a preteen kind of show, but or just a little younger than that. But he liked to watch Gumball, and it's not that I really minded him watching Gumball. It was a little bit annoying. But I used to always make a big deal of, oh, you're watching Gumball again. I hate that show, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't really, and so I kind of was just it was just part of a process um to get him. I was kind of winding him up a little bit by doing that. I really didn't mind that much about the show, but to this day, he still thinks that I hate Gumball like tremendously. I can't stand Gumball, and every once in a while he'll throw something, like show a clip or send a clip or whatever of this Gumball show, just to like to annoy me. But the reality was, when he was little, it wasn't that bad. I was just kind of winding him up. I was like, oh, that Gumball, because now gets into our probably you remember this as well, but my dad, when he would get home from work, I'd be watching Gilligan's Island, and he hated Gilligan's Island.
Oh
and
yeah.
uh and so he would, oh, how can you watch that stupid show? And I always thought it was kind of funny. I don't know that he necessarily thought it was funny, but I always thought it was funny that he would go on and on about Gilligan's Island. And so it got to the point where it was almost like this little thing that would happen, this little interaction that would happen. And so I was trying to kind of replicate that with my son with Gumball. But to this, I don't know. My dad's passed away, but I don't know if he was really mad about it or not. But he certainly seemed like it. And I thought, well, this would be kind of fun to do with my son. I got to pick something, and this was the show that I picked. But I really wasn't that. I really didn't care that much, but it just seemed like one that he was always watching, and I thought, well, I'll use this one to be my, kind of my show to wind him up a little bit every time he's watching it.
I think the one show that really annoyed my parents that I watched, and it was, I think, a daily thing, was Welcome Back, Kotter.
That's
My
funny.
mom hated that show. She thought that it was vulgar, and I thought it was
Welcome
funny.
back.
Right? John
Yeah,
Sebastian. Yep.
yeah, that's funny. Why? What? Because of the up your nose with a rubber hose.
Yeah, she just thought, for some reason, thought that was vulgar. And, you know, another thing she hated was that I liked Kiss.
Oh,
That's like
really?
one of my favorite bands is Kiss.
All right.
And I used to sneak around the little store behind us, and I would buy the bubblegum cards.
Oh,
Now,
okay. Wow.
if you remember the bubblegum cards,
I
you had
do.
a picture of them like on stage or whatever. And then on the back was a piece of a puzzle. And so I got all of them to where I could make the puzzle.
Oh
And
my gosh, you had a lot of
oh
kiss
yeah.
cards.
Oh yeah. They were like 25 cents or something like that back then.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd hid them away, and she found them, and my mother threw them away. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
I was heartbroken. And now that same set is worth, I think, $60 or more. It's
Yeah.
I think I'm probably might have spent $5 to $10 getting the whole set, and now it's worth six times that much.
Yeah.
And she thought they were the devil, for one.
Okay. She bought into the Knights and Satan Service KISS acronym, I guess.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
Bobby Boucher's mama, that's the devil.
That's
but it
funny.
didn't deter me. I was diehard Kiss, and now my office, it's wall to wall Kiss.
See,
And I
she
did
kind of
find that
fed it a
set
little
again.
bit. She
Yeah, she
fed it.
did.
Yeah. You got to be careful on that. If you get a little bit too much, you feed that. But not that it's bad. I think Kiss is great myself, and I remember those cards. I wish I had some myself, but um, yeah, that's funny that how that works though. I think a generation ago or more, our parents and so forth, it was they were a little more if they didn't like something, they were a little more vocal about it. And now you got to kind of hedge yourself a little bit, or else everybody digs in, and then it's worse than you thought.
I wasn't into it, but you remember Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's
Oh
gotten to
yeah.
be popular again. I don't know if you remember, they made a after school special. And it was a movie
Oh,
about some kid
Tom
that was into.
Hanks.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And they
I'm still
actually
in the
thought,
maze.
yeah, they
Yeah.
actually thought playing this game would warp your mind where you actually
Right.
thought you were in it and you were gonna go kill somebody or something.
Right. Exactly. You're gonna take your sword and go out and stab someone or whatnot. Yeah, poor Tom Hanks is strapped with that now. I've seen that pop up recently too. So
Really?
yeah, no, that little piece that they have an image of him and talk about that was like one of his first bigger uh movies, bigger situation. It was TV movie, but that was one of his bigger roles early on in his career. So it comes up every now and again anyway. But yeah, I'm stuck in the maze. He says something like that.
The whole censorship thing when we were kids, it backfired so bad. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
well, let's take for instance, I think I might have been in high school or just graduated when Tipper Gore decided that they needed to put labels on records.
Right. Parental advisory.
Exactly. And so when I went to go buy an album, I looked for the sticker because I knew that was the one I really wanted.
Yeah. Judas Priest probably sold more albums because of that sticker than anything else during their heyday there, because I think they were one of the first ones to get it, um, because they had an album I think came out right about the time that all that was happening. I vaguely remember. I can't remember the name of the album, but the album artwork has the guy holding the razor blade, and the razor
Mm-hmm.
blade says Judas Priest, and then it's the name of the album.
British
I can't
Steel.
remember. British Steel. There you go. I think that one came out very, very similar to that. And I remember that image with the sticker up in the corner, parental advisory.
Yeah, they thought Twisted Sister was gonna cause us to go crazy or something.
Right.
Or I think Warrant was one of them they were targeting,
Oh, sure.
and I don't remember who else, or I know Ozzy was one of them,
Oh, yeah. He's been in the middle of all that stuff.
and
Poor
ACDC.
Ozzy. There's
You
my Ozzy
can't
impersonation.
you can't understand him unless he's singing.
Yeah. Exactly. Although I love all the shows him and his son do on television. I don't know why. I think I've watched every one of them. They go places and whatnot. Or now they're even talking about Bigfoot and UFOs and stuff on the I Want to Believe or whatever. It's something oddly entertaining about Ozzy, no matter what he's doing. It's
Well,
an interesting thing. On that, I just remembered, because those all came out and so forth, but there was a movie, I think it was called the Decline of Western Civilization or something like that. It was a heavy metal movie, way back in the late 80s.
yeah.
And on there is a scene where Ozzy's making eggs. And I still clearly remember,
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
still
remember that.
clearly remember that because it was so fascinating. He was doing his thing, and they were talking, and he was being interviewed, and he was making breakfast for his kids or something, and talking about his history or what have you. And I think actually that was what kind of that scene or that part in the, that bit in the movie kind of set him on a trajectory to do all these shows because he was so entertaining just being himself. He was such a character, beyond all of the, kind of, but beyond all the kind of nature of being in a concert and so forth, where there's a lot of layers of pyrotechnics and whatever. Just him making breakfast was mesmerizing. It was weird.
Yeah. And you remember the three guys that went before Congress to advocate against the whole censorship?
Frank Zappa.
Frank Zappa, Dee Snider, and John Denver. Three
I don't remember
unlikely.
Denver. I don't remember Denver at all.
Yes, John Denver was there too. Can you believe it?
I remember Dee Snider and Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa was, for me, was the kind of the front runner. If you talk about that subject, I always think of Frank Zappa. Because we listened to Joe's Garage and Shake Your Booty and all that kind of stuff. And I just remember him during that time period. But John Denver, totally forgot.
Yep. You would not think those three would line up together, but yeah, they did.
And Dee Snider was really kind of the a little bit of the odd man out in that group because I think Denver and Zappa was obviously very underground-ish. In his fan, Denver was very popular at that just ahead of that time in the late 70s, and Dee Snider was popular with, I think, heavy metal and so forth, but I don't think he quite had the notoriety or cachet of the other two as far as people knowing who they were on site because he wore all the makeup and was part of the group. So
I mean, they started, I believe, in about the mid to late 70s, and it took them to 84 before they finally got popular.
I
had JJ French on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna tell you what, Dee Snider and JJ French, very intelligent guys. You wouldn't expect it, but very intelligent.
Well, I think everybody always gets whenever you look at metal bands and so forth. I mean, a lot of those people are very talented musicians beyond heavy metal. It's not just three chords kind of people. They've got a lot of training in other types of music and so forth. It just so happened that at that point in time, that's what was, everybody was going in that direction, and it was interesting and people liked to do it, and it caught their imagination. So but yeah, it's wild whenever you kind of get past some of the propaganda of the media putting everybody into the bad boy or bad girl image areas, and find out that they're really quite accomplished musicians beyond what they have, what they do on their tours and so forth. It's kind of fascinating. Zappa was a very experimental musician and did a lot of experimental music, but people don't know him for that. Nowadays, I don't even know what they know him for. Probably Valley Girl. I don't know.
The later generation, that's probably all they remember. But
that was so popular.
Yeah, I think he's one of the greatest musicians there ever was. To take two different genres and mash them together and make music that he did. I mean, it was beyond the goofy lyrics.
Right. I love the goofy lyrics. But...
Oh, I do too. I mean, going to Montana to raise my lonely dental floss.
Right. A long time ago, before he was part of the Mothers of Invention, he was on Steve Allen's show, which Steve Allen is, no one remembers Steve Allen, but he was the first guy to do the Tonight Show, just for reference. And I don't think it was on the Tonight Show. It was on another show that Steve Allen did. Frank Zappa was on, and he played the bicycle. And so he basically had a bicycle that he had set up, and he had tuned some of the spokes and so forth, and basically played a tune on the bicycle. And it was really quite fast. You can probably find it on YouTube somewhere. Frank Zappa plays the bicycle, but it stuck with me over the years. I saw it, and I didn't see it when it happened. I saw this, well after that. It probably in some documentary on him or whatever. But it's fascinating, and Steve Allen being a very, kind of 40s, 50s persona, he was into it. He thought it was interesting. So it was kind of a wild thing. He didn't have long hair or anything at that point. Zappa looked very clean cut because he was younger, very young.
I love Frank Zappa, and whenever there's a documentary on, I've got to watch it. And there was one that I was watching not too long ago, and one of the guest speakers or whatever on there, he had written a biography on the mothers of invention.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, man, that'd be a great guest for my show. So I Googled his name, found him. He's in, I think, North Carolina, and found out that he is a PR guy. And he gets a lot of musicians that are, the progressive rock kind of stuff, the Frank Zappas, the Captain Beefheart, and, all that kind of stuff. But the guy, he's got a list of people that he as clients you wouldn't believe. I mean, like Rick Wakeman and John Anderson, and I mean, I can go on and on. So I wrote him an email and see if I could get him to come on the show. And he messages me back and he says, look, I don't have the equipment for it right now. He says, I'm going to, but in the meantime, I have some clients that I'm trying to promote their music. Would you mind interviewing them? So I'm thinking, okay, no problem. Probably some guy trying to make it in the business, right?
Right.
So he sends me this list of names. On it is Vinny Appice, Kevin Godley, and I don't know if you remember Kevin Godley from 10cc.
Oh, okay.
He's the original drummer. And I mean, I was blown away by this. And so I'm really on board. And there's a few that he sends that I don't know who they are, or they've, joined some of my favorite bands, but later on, after people have exited the band. But I got to meet Jeff Cotton, who was the original guitar player for Captain Beefheart.
Wow.
And ended up we're buddies and text message each other all the time, and different people like that. But
That's
here it is, man. It's blown my mind that watching this documentary, taking the time to find this guy, and then having a relationship where he's sending me all these cool musicians. I got jazz guitarist coming on tomorrow.
Wow.
So
fantastic. Yeah, you never know what dots you're going to connect whenever you kind of reach out and do these things. It's amazing how strange that the world works sometimes.
Well, you have to take the initiative. That's the thing. People expect, I guess, these guests to just fall in their lap. You have to do some legwork, man.
Right. Well, and you never know where they're going to come from. So that's the thing. You never know. Sometimes the most popular people are not necessarily the most interesting.
That's something that I've discovered too. There's been people that I think there's no way anybody's going to listen to this and end up being one of my best guests. And then I get someone who, I mean, their names are very familiar, get on, and it's like pulling teeth trying to get them to just talk,
Right. Well, yes. Because that's not some people just don't have that skill. I mean, conversation is a skill. I there's a person that I've worked with, and he's actually a doctor, and he's like, we have his house. He has a bunch of kids. He said, in his house we have conversation time, and he teaches his kids the art of conversation, and they talk to each other. And I thought it was, I was at the dinner with him, and I thought it was so fascinating because he's like, yeah, I like to teach my kids the art of conversation. And I thought, well, I was younger at the time, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's so strange, but it's true. It is a skill that you have to pick up on. It's not something that you're going to be, unless you are, some people have, the gift of gab or whatever, but the art of picking up on conversation is something that actually can be developed. So but you have to do it. And so he takes the time for all his kids, and he had like 10 kids. It's a crazy amount of children this guy has.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And must have been bored.
Yeah, that's what I was trying not to be too. When I was sitting with him, I'm like, he says that, and I'm like, oh, really? How interesting. But
are you from Utah?
Yeah. But yeah, he would take time every week, and more than once a week sometimes, and sit down with the kids, and they would just talk. So no TV or anything. This was pre, the cell phones were around, but not like they are now, where the smartphone has killed people's ability to be near each other without fiddling around with the darn thing. But old cell phones, where you play Snake or something, and that really wasn't quite that interesting. So, but I thought that was interesting when I was younger, and I think that there is something to it, and it's something that's not talked about too much. I mean, people don't talk about it all that much. I mean, they do it in different ways. He was obviously kind of a scholarly fellow, and so he kind of took an initiative that was more direct. Other people like Miles, my friend Miles, his family always plays cards, and so that's the point of conversation, is you play cards and all these different card games that they play, and then that's where that ensues, because you're playing the game, but it's not such a focused game that you can't do something else. And so you're all sitting there playing cards, and then as part of playing cards, then you talk about whatever's happening. And I think that's a little bit lost in society now, with cell phones. And oddly enough, what we're doing right now is a bit of taking its place, because you and we literally just met, had a couple emails, and just met minutes before we started talking. Yet we're finding out that we're both very similar in age. We both have similar experiences. I'm incredibly envious of you and your Kiss card collection at this point. I was grew up kind of a poor kid, and so I couldn't get the Kiss cards, and so now it just makes me even more envious that you were able to go pick those things up on a regular basis. And I'm like, man, if I only had a Kiss card collection now, I'll be hitting up eBay or something after this to get my Kiss card collection, and my wife will be like, what's the $60 charge for all these Kiss cards?
Well, I was kind of devious about the way I went and bought them. I think it was my grandparents had saved up a bunch of quarters, and I guess there was about $20 worth of quarters, and my mom had put them away for me to, I think, put in my savings account or something at the bank. And I knew where they were hidden, and I went and I just started taking quarters out of it. And I look back and think, I wonder if the guy behind the counter said something to my parents, because I would grab a quarter or two, go buy the cards, come home, open them up and look at them, and then go grab a couple of more quarters and run back to the store. I probably did that 15, 20 times that day. It's, where is this kid getting all these quarters?
Yeah, I stole from my brother, because he's older than I am, and he started working, and he had a change. I don't even know what it was. It was some kind of jug, a change jug, back in maybe people do this now. I don't know. I don't keep a lot of change myself, but he would work and he had money, and so he was doing stuff, and he had this change jug, and so I'd go into his room when he wasn't working or whatever, and I'd get change out of his jug to go buy candy and whatnot. So I didn't think about the kiss cards at that point, but this is very now, and my brother's very large guy, and he's towering person, and so I was very intimidated by him all my life because he beat me up a lot. But every once in a while, when I was really at my wits end to have some candy, I'd steal from him. So if he listens to this, he's probably going to be writing me, calling me up and saying,
He's gonna beat
with
you up
interest.
I don't know if you've noticed, but for me, the older that I'm getting, the more sentimental I seem to be.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I will go to a flea market or one of these, junk shops, whatever you want to call them, thrift shops, and I'll look for stuff that from my past that I either had and I've lost it, or something I really, really wanted as a kid and never got. I went to a store, and I'm going to show you this real quick. Hold on.
Sure.
All right. I didn't have this as a kid, and I wanted it so badly. And now I'm the proud owner of the $6 million man space
And the
rocket.
space rocket, yeah.
And you open it up, and it's a surgery table.
Oh, really? It opens up. I didn't remember that. The surgery table part. I remember the space rocket. I recognized the image there. Yeah.
So have you done anything like that?
Well, I don't want to bring it down or anything at this point, but so I had a house fire a couple of years ago, and my house burnt down. So and we lost everything, right? So it was my daughter was off at college, so she didn't lose as much as the rest of the family, but the rest of us, my son and wife and I, we lost everything. So
Sorry.
I know we're over it now. We're good. But at the time, I had, and this is akin to your kiss cards, I had saved from my childhood Star Wars cards. So I had original tops or whatever it was, Star Wars cards and stickers from back in the 70s that I had, and I didn't get a lot of them, so I couldn't make the whole picture or anything, but I had just probably, I don't even think it was even a dozen that I had saved, and those were gone, right? So because everything got lost. But the weird thing is, I certainly am nostalgic and love to talk about it, but that experience has kind of ruined anything for me in the kind of collectibles department, because of that, I'm like, I don't know if I want to accumulate things again just to have them all be gone, because it literally was within a matter of hour, so but I don't want to be too sad a story there, but it was quite a shock to the system. And so I've kind of lost a little bit. I lost all of that kind of want. I like to look at it like seeing you with that right now, with the Steve. I remember it. My neighbor had that action figure, and we would, I would go over and look through the eye, and we do the do a whole thing, and all those memories. I love all those memories and so forth, but I've kind of lost the taste for the memorabilia aspect of it because of the situation. And the weird thing is, my son, who's very young, he's just in college now, he lost it as well. He used to have Nintendo collection. So I had a Nintendo, the original Nintendo, with the light gun and everything that I had as a kid. I still had it, and I gave it to him. He played it, and then he had the Wii, and so the Switch and so forth. We lost all that, and he had a collection of Nintendo things, was kind of his thing, which is funny because he talked like Mario, because there's no connection there other than get to the eye now. But he had the GameCube and all this other stuff that was even before his time, that we kind of collected together over going to different garage sales and different places, resale shops and whatever. But yeah, he kind of lost that urge as well. It's a weird. I would have never thought it because, like I mentioned, I didn't grow up with a lot of expendable income, and so I always wanted a lot of different things. But that experience kind of wiped that out. And I think it's just because, at any moment, because literally we went to dinner and we came home and the house was burning down, and we drove up on it, and it was all happening. And so yeah, it was a weird experience. And so now I don't know if I have in my back of my head where I dread that happening again, and so I don't want to accumulate, or what the deal is, but I kind of got that. But I do love to talk about the stories and remember all the different stuff that's out there and look at it. I'll look online, and I even follow certain things that show all that stuff, like old 70s catalog, 80s catalog pages with the toys and everything. I still love to look at all of it, but I don't have that desire to necessarily have it myself per se. So yeah, it's weird. It's a weird happenstance. But if you would have asked me this 5 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, heck yeah, I want to have that. But
oh man, part of me, it's because I missed my childhood, and part of it is I want to have something to pass on to my kids and my grandkids. The Star Wars stuff, I was just old enough to go out and mow yards when Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
And so I would go and mow the neighbor's yard so I'd get enough money to go buy an action figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I had so many of those Star Wars toys. And like for Christmas, my mom got me the Darth Vader carrying case. And
Wow.
I filled that thing. I could have filled that thing up probably 2 or 3 times with all that stuff that I saved up for. And then sometimes I would save up to get a spaceship or what have you. And I accumulated so many Star Wars things, and I left it at the house. And when I moved away, my mom got rid of all of it. And I think I could have retired with as much stuff that I had.
Yeah. Well, but that's moms. They got to make room for whatever, whatever thing that was happening after you left. I had a story. So I used to work at McDonald's when I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all the Happy Meal toys. So at the time, the big thing was the Stompers, which was 4x4 trucks.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
They had all the Stompers. Well, because basically I was stealing them, to be honest with you. I mean, we would just take them because you worked there and they're available, and I don't think anybody really cared necessarily, because you did get food allowance while you worked there at that point in time. I don't know if they do that anymore, but you basically, if you worked a certain amount of hours, you got free food, and you just say, I'm going to get a Happy Meal or whatever, and I'll have a Stomper. And so, but I had all the Stompers and all the Muppet things at that time when I was working there. And yeah, all those got thrown away by my mother, as well as one of the things that I got was they changed over the menu board, and I took home all the menu boards for whatever reason at the time. I thought it was cool. And so I had, there's like 3 pieces to the menu board at that time. And it was all plastic, and you had to rotate the numbers for the prices and all that good kind of stuff. It was like these little films where the names of the products, hamburger, what have you. And yeah, I had that in the garage for a long time, and my mom chucked all that. And it was worth. I happened to be later in my life. I was at a conference that was totally separate from this, but at the conference they had a McDonald's collectors were at the hotel. And so I walked through the vendor area of the McDonald's collectors conference that was part of this big, hotel thing. And that menu board was worth like a couple $100, and this would be back like in the early 90s. Because they
Man.
just don't, they just use TVs now,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm like, oh, just like you, oh my gosh, and then the stompers were like $4 a piece.
Gee,
It was
man.
crazy at that point. I mean, this would be, like I said, in the early mid 90s, I guess, somewhere in that neighborhood. But yeah, I'm like, oh, I used to have that. I used to have that. And I used to have all of these toys on my dashboard of my car when I worked there. All these McDonald's toys would just like slosh around as I drove for some reason. I don't know why I did that, but I thought it was funny. And people would get in the car and play with them, and then some people would take some and leave some, and so yeah, my car was just full of fast food toys for a couple of years while I was doing that for work. So,
Jeez. Well, when I was a kid, I was a hustler. I would go and mow yards. I would, paint houses. I mean, whatever I could do to make money, I was going to do it. And
hey, you're much
besides
more.
prostituting.
You're much more, much more of a hustler than me. I'm so lazy. I'm like, oh, I just wanted, can you just give me the money? Can I just take the money from you?
Oh,
No, I didn't work until I got a little older. So,
oh man,
uh,
what was it? Summertime, I would make about pretty close to at least $2,000 to $2,400 a summer.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
but I blew
The
it all on junk.
Well, but that's I think that's the good part, because the problem would be, if you got older and you don't have too much money when you're younger, and you have some money and you get to do that, then you kind of get it out of your system a little bit and can be a little more responsible when you get older on some of that. I don't know if where you grew up. I grew up in the Midwest, and we detasseled corn in the summertime. So like you would get hired on by these big seed companies at the time. I don't know that they do this so much anymore, but they would have busloads of kids, and you'd go out and you'd pull tassels out of corn in a coordinated manner, and that would make hybrid corn, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my summer job, was to go and the tassel corn. They had to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning and catch the bus, and then the field's all wet and you're walking through there and you're soaking wet, and then you'd be done shortly after lunch. By about 1 o'clock or so, they'd take you back home. But that was always my it was a little more organized, but then also it was a little more chaos, because it's like school. Basically fill up a bus full of these idiot kids and take them out to the of all these farms all around the area, and you'd walk through and pull these tassels out. But that was I think I would have rather, if I had my druthers nowadays, I would have rather done what you did, which was kind of be more of an independent contractor, because they were the tasseling corn was not very fun as a whole. And then half the time, just like as you get into your adult work, half the kids didn't do shit, and sorry, half the cars
I,
didn't do anything, and then you were the one that were picking up slack on all these other kids. So
yeah.
yeah, if you can do something when you're younger that you can kind of control, I mean, it's all the better.
Well, when I got a little bit older, I'd say probably about 14, my dad had an air conditioning business. And so I would go work for him during the summertime. I'd make $200 a week, but
Wow.
I was up in those hot attics, and I was putting in duct work or helping them take those units in and out of the attic. And this was some really ass busting work,
Yeah.
to put it mildly. And man, those were the best. Because I mean, what teenager wouldn't be excited about having $200 a week?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I started collecting records, so I was down there buying records all the time, or I'd save up my paycheck and I got a stereo. Whatever I could do, I was out there. I was hustling. I ended up working for my it was an air conditioning and plumbing business that my dad used to work for, and I made $200 a week working there. So yeah, I had a lot of stuff, but I also worked my butt off to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, but it probably was kind of, I mean, I can I helped my dad out uh when I was young too, and always thought that was the most fun. Now he wasn't always the kindest if things didn't go well, but it was kind of fun to run around with my dad and help him out with some stuff. I usually only went on Saturdays, but we would run around on Saturdays, and then my reward was I got lunch, usually at some dive bar that he had to stop by, and but I remember these things because he would be like, "Okay, you're gonna go order us food." I was probably, I don't know, 11 years old or something, and he'd be like, "Go in there, you're gonna order us food. I'm gonna take care of the client." And I was in this bar that was a stand-up only bar, so there's no chairs. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
rail bar. So it's basically this little skinny uh, place on a street somewhere back in the 80s. And all you could do is stand at the bar and you could put your foot up. That was it. And but they made lunch. And so all these guys would come in for lunch. And some guys were there all day, but but it was a great experience. And the lady who worked there was real nice, and she, what are you guys having today? And I'd order lunch for us, and we have our lunch there at this bar. But it's so far afield from McDonald's or any of that kind of thing today. I don't know that there is still stuff like that out there, but I don't think that generally kids don't have that experience much anymore these days. I don't know what the rules are anymore, but here I am, 11-year-old standing at the bar getting my lunch.
Oh
It's
man.
just fun.
For me, it was getting to go to Dairy Queen after I got paid on Friday. I don't know why that was such a big deal, but it was.
Dairy Queen
Uh,
used to be a bigger deal back then, I think.
yeah. Now on your show, I mean, you talk about pop culture stuff that goes on in your life, but you get into the paranormal as well.
Oh yeah, because I've had some weird experiences over time, and I love to talk about it, and I love the idea of it, and I also really enjoy uh, the pop culture of the paranormal. I guess we could call it that, because there's all these shows, and some of them are better than others, and like some of
Mm-hmm.
them better than others. But this whole concept behind them, I think, is really interesting. And the funny thing is, I kind of sit in the middle between the believer and the skeptic, and I could fall to either side very easily depending on the circumstance of things that happen in the show. Because like, okay, I still watch them to this day, and I'll with my family, and I'm like, okay, you can see the door move, but you can't see behind the door, and you can't see if there's somebody back there. So somebody's moving the door, right? So
Right.
skeptic, right? And then you see something. I'm trying to think of something that's really good. Like if you see an apparition, and you're like, okay, so there's an apparition and you see it. And it's like, well, that is really interesting because obviously they could fake this, but they're telling us that they're not faking it. But it looks really good and really interesting. And so then I kind of buy into it a little bit. But I have had an experience, more than one experience over time with weird things happening. But probably the most challenging and weirdest one was after the house burnt down, we had to move into a rental for about a year in order to get through everything, right, and get a place to stay, and then rebuild the place that we lived in. And the first night we were in the rental, I saw a shadow person,
Oh
right?
wow.
I don't know if you listen to this, but I'll tell you real quick here. So I'm asleep. We just get there. We have nothing, right? The place is empty. My wife had arranged basically for Amazon to deliver uh, mattresses and frames on the day that we moved into the rental so that we didn't have to, they shipped. So they just drop shipped them there. And I put them all together. And that, we're exhausted because of everything that's gone on. And I go to bed and I wake up in the middle of the night and I think at the time, I think in my head, there's somebody outside the window. And it's a shadow, right, of this person that seems to be facing the window. And where we were living at was a very nice place, but the neighbor guy was kind of kooky, and I'd already met him. On first day we're there, this guy comes over, introduces himself, and he's kind of like a used car salesman, and hey, how you doing? Blah, 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 and I'm like, fine, but I'm trying to get situated here.
Right.
We've been through a lot, and I don't want to buy a car from you. I don't know what you're trying to sell me at this point, but it was a little bit he was a little bit ham-fisted in his approach to the neighbors. So I thought, is this guy looking in the window? Because they had blinds, so you could just see,
Right.
So I didn't think much of it. We're exhausted. I fall back asleep, and then the next day, I tell my wife, I said, I think there was somebody outside the window last night. She's
Oh
all
my
mad at
God.
me because I didn't wake her up. Why didn't you wake me up? There's somebody outside the window. I'm like, well, they didn't seem to be doing anything. And I was really tired. And so she was all mad at me. So the next night, my son comes to me and he says, Dad, somebody a shadow came into my room last night and tried to grab my leg.
What?
Yeah. So he was in another room and he stayed up. He was, staying up, and we got him a video game just to give him something to do, Switch. And because there's nothing else in the house. Right? We didn't have a couch or anything and TV or whatnot. So we had gotten him a Switch that delivered as well, so that he would have something to do. And he's like, yeah, I was laying in my room, right? He has bed, playing his game, and this thing kind of just moved into the room, and then it kind of came at me, and it acted like it was like grabbed my leg, and I basically ran through it and went out into the other room. And he spent the rest of the night, I think, out in the living room, basically with no furniture or anything, because he didn't want to bother us. I don't know why, but I'm like, well, just come bother me. So
I'd have been screaming, hey, somebody get in here.
So yeah, and everything had happened, and so everybody's all discombobulated, and so yeah, so he tells me this. I'm like, and so now I have to make a decision, right? This is one of those fatherly decisions. So we're stuck here, right, for at least 6 months or more, right?
Right.
Because of our situation. There's no place else to go. We're lucky we're here. It's one of those kind of things. We had lived in a hotel for about 3 weeks or whatever to get to this point, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, I'm sure that was nothing. You're just tired. And in the back of my mind, I'm screaming, oh my gosh, this thing that I saw the other night is wandering around this house. And so,
Man.
yeah, so we had to stay there. So I had to kind of keep it up. And because I didn't want him to be freaking out because we've already had all this other stuff happen. So he had a couple of other encounters. I did not after that point, where he saw the thing walking through the kitchen, like a person, but a shadow, no person. And it was set up to where the kitchen would go to like a laundry room, and then the laundry room would go to the garage, so it was kind of in that area. And he told me about it, and I'm like, I'm sure it's okay, and but tell me if anything else happens, but I'm sure there's nothing to it. You just, we've been through a lot. And but then we've been there for a while, and we got a dog because we had animals prior that all passed away. And we had, play with the dog. So the basement was completely unfinished and empty. And so we would go downstairs and throw a tennis ball around for the dog to chase. And the dog would not go in one corner of the basement ever. Not to get the ball. It just avoided, but it would run everywhere. But if the ball ended up in that corner of the basement, it wouldn't even try to get it. After chasing this ball all over the place, it would not go into that spot. And there was nothing there. I mean, it was literally just a concrete basement. No, like, it wasn't like the furnace was over there or the water heater or anything like that. Nothing in this corner, but this dog would not go in that corner. And so we just assumed that whatever it was lived in that corner at that point. We just avoided.
It's possible. Very possible.
But anyway, that's one of the weirder encounters, and it was with basically a shadow. It was weird, and I've never been able to. Now, nobody else saw it besides my son and I, and my wife you hear things in the basement like bumps and things, but it wasn't like no talking or anything like that. But you'd hear like something moving around in the basement, and there's nothing down there. I mean, we put some boxes down there, but that was it. And otherwise it was completely empty. And yeah, so we would, my wife would be like, "What's that noise? What's that noise?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And then my son and I would be like, but I didn't, not let on. And so when we finally moved out, then I finally told him, "Yeah, I saw it too," because I didn't want him to think that he didn't. He didn't.
You trying to play it down all that time.
But I played it down while we were there because I'm like, we have to make it through this this phase, which is going to last for several months without, getting everybody. I wanted to be able to sleep and so forth, because otherwise I'm sure he'd stay awake all night if that was the case, So yeah, it is weird. But I talk about that. Miles has had some weird happenstances and so forth, but as a whole, the shows and so forth that don't have. It's one of those kind of things where you have to experience it. I think it's a weird situation where if you don't fall, into that situation, you can't quite comprehend everything. So it's just a weird situation. But yeah, overall, I think a lot of the shows are kind of faking it and so forth. But
yeah, there is. I'm a paranormal investigator myself, and I got into when I started doing that, there was something else that I just felt like I needed to do, and that's why I started doing a podcast on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to meet so many of those guys that are on the shows, and we've talked about that, and most of them that I talked to, they said that they would walk away if they were going to start faking evidence, because it takes away from what we're trying to do.
I would hope so. I want to believe them, but sometimes it's hard whenever you're looking at it. You're like, okay, well, we need that other angle, we need to know what's behind the door.
Well, I mean, when you do paranormal investigations, most of the time you're sitting in the dark talking to yourself. Okay. For some of these shows that they go out, and every place they go to is just filled with all this paranormal activity, it's just not feasible.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you're lucky if you get one or two things to happen in the same area that's haunted, but to have 30, 40 different things happening, it just doesn't happen.
So what's your since you're more into this, then what is your thought as to kind of a why and how? So what is your thought as to how these things happen and why they happen? Because obviously it's not like Old Faithful. It doesn't happen every half hour or whatever. You know what I mean? you can't predict it. It's totally unpredictable.
Well,
And what's your thoughts on that?
Not necessarily. Some places it's almost as if the building or the structure, wherever it's happening, it's almost as if it's recorded what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a playback. It happens at the same time, every evening, every day, whenever this trauma happened, you're going to get the reenactment of it pretty much, or you're seeing it as if it happened. You were there. I
Mm-hmm.
think that, and this is proven. It's like a frequency of the wood or the stone, brick, whatever, that captures that moment in time, and it's literally like you just recorded something with your camera, and it's being
You're
played
on
back.
the like, so for instance, granite and quartz and also all those kind of things can be memory storage, right? So you're
Right,
on
right, right.
that idea. My thought is that and this is a little bit I don't know, different, but maybe not. Anyway, is that so time if you think about time is not necessarily like a ribbon. So there's no necessarily beginning and end to time as we go through things. And so I always like to think that a lot of these things are basically a thinness in the difference of kind of a temporal state. So we live in this temporal state. We're talking, interacting. I can touch my computer monitor and my microphone and what have you, and they're all there and everything. So they're a different time period. So if you go back 100 years or whatever, well, actually, if you think about however old your house is, if you went back to the beginning of your house, that's another time. But they all exist everything exists at once, but you experience it based on where you're at in time. And so I think there's thinner points, temporal points, where you can experience what other people are experiencing in their time. So the funny thing is, I've always wondered. So let's say if this would be an experiment. I don't know if anybody's done this, but you go to the same place and you're looking for these for anomalies, right? And
Right.
you go and, like, for a very long period of time. So if there was a way you could do this on some kind of interval, would at some point in the future you see yourself or somebody else see you doing that? So that would be a way to prove that. But I think that is my thought. For instance, the one of the great things I think I've seen was the at Gettysburg. So Gettysburg, there's this footage of basically Civil War soldiers that are like somewhat transparent going across this field.
Right.
I don't know that it's faked or not, but I've seen it several times, and it's really compelling to see. So if you take it that no one's playing tricks on you and that was real, I mean, that's kind of part of the basis of this, is that so these guys are there at that time during the Battle of Gettysburg, and they're walking there, and you happen to be there at the time when the veil is at its thinnest, and you're seeing what's happening.
Yeah.
Because that is to me that in my mind that makes a lot of sense because of just the nature of things. Now, it could also just be because I've worked with Photoshop and all these things where you have layers and you can always peel back the layer of things.
Right.
But I think that time is layered, and sometimes you can see that. And that's what these are. And then also that kind of explains to me, at least, to where it's not as regular as maybe it could be, because those temporal points can change because it's fluid, right?
Right. Right.
And so then it would change as opposed to always be the same. And this could be anywhere. So so that way, one person has this experience, another person has that experience at the exact same place, or even different places, and that would kind of explain some of that. But anyway, that's getting into all that kind of stuff. But I just was curious, since you've been doing this more than me,
Well,
then what your thoughts were too.
what you just said is kind of similar to what my theory is of these other occurrences, not the ones that you are, you see the same thing over and over again. These random spirits or whatever you're seeing. Once again, it's proven that we live on a certain vibration or a certain frequency. Everything, all the molecules, atoms, everything is at a certain frequency. So if you were able to change, say, the frequency of my microphone, you would see something totally different.
Yeah.
With that, I believe that's why there's different dimensions, and these different dimensions are all going on at the same time. So if there is a sudden change in that frequency, then you're seeing somebody from a different dimension, not necessarily a ghost.
A ghost, yeah.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that there's not ghosts out there. I do believe that there are, but I just think some of the experiences we have we're seeing another dimension. But
yeah, that's the hard part about all that is it's not like you work in a lot of non-definitives, so you can't say. The other thing on those shows I always think is kind of funny is they're always attributing it to something. They read something and then they attribute it to that person or whatever immediately. I know for a show you have to build the story, right? So that makes it good for the story to say, Joe whoever lived here and died here, and so therefore that was Joe's ghost. But there's obviously no definitive way to say that for sure was Joe's ghost, because you can't take a sample or anything. And and a lot of times it's very it's not very defined what you see, so you can't see necessarily facial features totally all the time, and you can't necessarily, like, they always wore like a necklace or something and that shows up or something like that. But I find that interesting because they always build the story off of exactly what they just researched, and so it's like, oh well, that's convenient, but is it really what happened? But I understand story. To get a cohesive story, you need to do things like that, because for the viewer, that's what the viewer wants. They want to have some semblance of something that's cohesive, right? They don't want just fragments or anything, because like you said, most of the time you spend, and I'm sure all these shows spend hours and hours sitting in the dark with nothing happening, and then they do that for a week, and then out of that week they put together an hour show, along with going to all these other people and doing interviews and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting though. I really hope that at some point in my lifetime that we get something that's more conclusive happen.
You're going to see it soon.
Think so?
Yes, because I happen to know a couple of guys that were on Ghost Hunters that have a new show that'll be coming out soon, and they have some equipment that's going to give you definitive proof.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Actually, they've already used it. They've already used it on TV, but I think you're going to see more of it. So,
oh, cool. I'm anxious.
But yeah, like you say, they're there for sometimes several days, sometimes several weeks, and you'll get clips from different evenings. But even then, as much evidence as they pull up on television, I don't care if you've been there a month, you're not going to get as much evidence as some of these guys get.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous.
I'm always now. I think,
dude.
Right. that was what I was going to get to. Somebody always gets touched, right? And I believe that you can get touched. I think that can happen, but I think that's kind of the go-to when things aren't going very well. Oh, something touched my shoulder. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it seems like whenever the episode kind of has a little bit of a lull, then all of a sudden somebody gets touched, and it's like, now if they get scratched or something, then you got something there that you can think about a little bit more.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's like somebody touched my shoulder, but there's no discernible, it's like, you touching their shoulder. It's not like they gouge them or something or anything like that. So yeah, there's some that I like, but to be honest with you, a lot of times the ones that, like you mentioned, ghost hunters, and that's the I'm trying to blanking on his name, but the guy who used the Roto Rooter guy, right? He used to be a
Yeah.
Roto Rooter guy. I
Yeah.
like their
Both.
show because sometimes nothing happens. I mean,
Well, they're
a
more
little bit
honest
happens, but not
about
a
it.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they try to debunk everything, not
right,
automatically say,
right,
oh, that was a ghost. Oh, did you hear that noise? It's got to be a ghost. No,
right.
sometimes, something is. How many times have you leaned a broom or something up against the wall, and after a while it just kind of slides over and falls
Yeah,
down? That stuff happens.
sure.
But
Stuff.
that's
Well, he was a plumber or something, right? And
yeah, yeah.
so,
Both Grant and oh god, I forget the other guy's name. But anyway, they were both Roto Rooter guys.
yeah. And so a lot of times your house is, I think people forget that your house is constantly moving, even though you don't feel it. But
Yeah.
because of the processes, the heater, air conditioning, plumbing, if you live near a road that people drive on a lot,
We live near a
um,
train.
yeah, train,
I mean,
you're
come on.
constantly having movement that you may or may not notice because you've kind of blocked it out because you've been there long enough, or you're just blocking it out. But yeah, there's always something happening in the background that you may or may not be aware of, or just air movement
Oh,
whenever the heater
yeah.
comes on. Yeah.
Yeah. I did an investigation at this place, and they had a few other teams that had been in there and said, oh, this place is so haunted. This happens, that happens. And I went into this one room that they say this activity goes on. When the air conditioning would turn on and then shut off, the tiles in the ceiling would raise and lower.
Right. They click.
It's
Yeah.
pressure. I mean, it is
Yeah.
air pressure. They said, oh, you could hear a chair rolling across the top floor, and you go up there, they have a fax machine, and at a certain time every night it resets itself. So
Oh.
you hear the rollers and stuff in those copier fax machines.
Mhm.
That's what was going on. I thought it was funny. They would say, oh yeah, about 2 o'clock in the morning every night you start hearing voices. There's a freaking bar not even a block down the road. What time does a bar usually close?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock in the morning. And you got people out there that drank too much and they're a little
Mhm.
boisterous, and you're going to hear their voices.
Yeah.
So
The
there's
uh,
explanations for a lot of this stuff.
back a long time ago, Blair Witch. You remember the Blair Witch
Oh yeah.
movie? So the Blair Witch movie had come out, and I went to the movies to see it, and we were watching it, and it was pretty cool at the time. Obviously there's been a bazillion of those kind of found footage things since then, but when Blair Witch came out, it was kind of its own entity for a little while, and
Mm-hmm.
we're in the theater, and it's not too packed. I can't remember. It's probably a matinee or something because I'm a cheapskate, so I'm always trying to save a buck. But the watching the movie, all of a sudden you hear click 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 click, click, right inside the theater, and it's not part of the movie. Like, what was that? Because it's all kind of moody and everything. And then a little bit later, click 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 click. Turns out the drop ceiling in the theater, whenever the air would kick on, it
Oh
would
yeah.
basically it would raise all these ceiling tiles in sequence, and it was just going, and it was just the weirdest experience because you're so in the mood, right, when we're watching that movie, and when the first few times it happens, you're like, oh my gosh, what's that? It's right here
Yeah.
with us.
When before I moved up here to Austin, we lived in LaPorte, Texas. in the place that I lived in, it was haunted. And I'm telling you, there was stuff that happened in there that it wasn't movement, it wasn't things like that. This was actual paranormal activity. I had a lazy boy chair that would be turned upside down in the morning, and
Like
it's
all the way upside down,
all the way upside down.
Those things are not light.
No, exactly. I got a grandfather clock from my grandfather when he passed away, and it would be laid over on its side. And if that thing's going to fall over and crash, you're going to hear it. Okay.
Well, that and I mean, it would fall apart.
Exactly. But this thing would
grandfather clocks are not durable. You can't just push them end to end and expect things to stay together.
Right.
Yeah.
But there was one evening, and I was sitting in my room, and the room and the bathroom were pretty much the same room. The only thing that was separated was the toilet and the shower, but the sink and everything was pretty much in the room. So I had a linen closet, and all of a sudden I started hearing it kind of move, and then all of a sudden it just started going like this, and I'm like, whoa, what the heck, and I've got to research this, what's going on, and I'm a little shaken too, because this was unexpected. And so I get up and thinking I'm gonna find this freaking ghost in the linen closet. No, my damn cat had gotten in there somehow and was scratching.
Oh no.
Yeah, was hitting the door at the same time. I'm like, well, there's my paranormal activity right there.
Yeah, cats love to do that. I don't know why. They beat on doors, make lots of noise.
Yeah, I could go on about that stuff, but
that's wild though. The lazy boy and the clock is wild stuff. I can't imagine walking out in the room and being like, what the heck happened here?
I could tell you story after story after story, but unfortunately we have come to the end of the show. So before we go, if somebody wants to catch your show, where would they find it?
Sure, they can find it at staticradio.com. It's on all of the listings everywhere. Any place you go. I found it on a thing. What was it called? Something Overcast. I didn't even know it was there. And there it was.
And what about social media?
Same thing. So most everything is at the Static Radio. A few things are under my name, Bob LeMent, or Miles Tidal, but mostly Static Radio. If you want to go to, Facebook or Instagram or one of the Twitter, one of the major ones, every once in a while they come out and become popular and we don't catch it in time. So I think on TikTok we're like Static Radio 3 or something like that. But most of the other ones, Static Radio.
Well, I'll make it easy for our audience. I'll put the links in the description. So, but Bob, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really enjoyed this talk.
Yeah, it was fantastic. We're the art of conversation here today.
I think the audience enjoys that more than just the regular, answer this question for me. I enjoy doing it this way anyhow.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, of course, man. Anytime. We'll have to do this again in the future.
Sure. I've got a bazillion more stories, and I want to hear more about your haunted house. I can tell you that. So
would love to share that. I love to talk. But I also want to thank all of you guys out there. If you are new to the channel, please come back despite what you heard today. No, I'm kidding. Hit that subscribe button. For my regulars out there, I appreciate y'all because you make it possible for me to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network